I'll verify the checkable claims before rewriting. Search quota is exhausted, but the 4 searches I ran covered the load-bearing claims: birth, death, diary scale, the 1887 to 1892 decipherment window, volume counts, and the Gentleman Jack production details. Corrected script below. Section Hook. In the early 1890s, at 2 o'clock in the morning, a man named Arthur Burrell sat in Shibden Hall, Yorkshire, staring at a page of symbols no one alive could read. He'd just cracked 2 letters. Then he found a scrap of paper hidden behind a wall panel, and the entire code fell open. What he read horrified him so completely that he turned to the diary's owner and said, "Burn all 27 volumes. This is the story of Anne Lister, the woman the BBC turned into a television hero, and the real secret she buried inside 4 to 5 million words of handwritten code." The show got a lot right, but what it couldn't show you is somehow stranger. Section The Code Nobody Was Supposed to Break. Anne Lister was born on the 3rd of April, 1791, in Halifax, Yorkshire. Her family's seat, the house she would eventually inherit, was Shibden Hall, a timber-framed manor house that still stands today, though she spent much of her childhood at her mother's small estate at Market Weighton. She was a landowner, an industrialist, a mountaineer, a traveller. Her neighbours called her Gentleman Jack. Her lover called her Fred. And starting in 1806, when she was 15 years old, she began keeping a diary. She wrote in it sporadically at first, then from 1817, systematically and almost daily, right up to the 11th of August, 1840. 6 weeks before she died in the distant city of Kutaisi, then in the Russian Empire, now in the Republic of Georgia. Her Oxford Dictionary biography is careful about what killed her, an illness variously described as a fever, as the plague, and as poisoning from an insect bite. The popular version, a tick bite, is a guess dressed as a fact. Nobody knows. The diaries themselves are staggering in scale. According to the West Yorkshire Archive Service, which holds them, they run to 7,722 pages. The archive catalogues them as 26 volumes, 24 bound books, plus 2 small notebooks, and a gathering of loose sheets. Though you will also see 27 quoted, including by Burrell himself, and the count has never really settled. Estimates of their total length range from over 4 million words to roughly 5 million. For comparison, the archive points out that the diaries of Samuel Pepys, probably the most famous journal in the English language, run to about 1.25 million words. Lister's are at least 3 times longer. But here is what makes them unlike almost any other diary we have. Roughly 1/6 of all those millions of words are written in a private cipher Anne Lister devised herself. She called it her Crypt hand. Section Building the Crypt hand. She built it young and not entirely for herself. As a teenage pupil at the Manor School in York, Anne began using the code to pass private messages with her first girlfriend, a fellow pupil named Eliza Rain. The cipher was built from a combination of Greek letters and algebraic and punctuation symbols, stitched together into a substitution alphabet. Over the years, her biographers agree, it grew more complex, and Anne used it for everything she considered private: her finances, her health, her fears about venereal disease, and above all, her romantic and sexual relationships with women. She was meticulous. In the physical diaries, coded passages are sometimes set off by large hand-drawn brackets, a visual wall between the public text and the private truth. She wrote plain text about her business dealings, her coal mines, her travels, and then sometimes switched mid-sentence into the Crypt hand to record what actually happened behind closed doors. And she believed with real confidence that no one would ever read it. A peer-reviewed article in the Journal of Lesbian Studies takes its title directly from her own words about the cipher's security, impossibility of its being deciphered. She was writing, she believed, for herself alone. In June of 1821, she confided to the diary itself that she owed a good deal to this journal, that by unburdening her mind on paper, she felt as if she were handing it over to a friend who hears it patiently and keeps it faithfully. Now, the popular framing of this code is that it was uncrackable. That's the word you'll see in headlines. It is not quite accurate. The Crypt hand is, technically, a substitution cipher. Two Victorian amateurs got into it, and once they had a crib, the decisive break came in a single night, though working through the diaries took them a good deal longer than that. Today you can decode it yourself using a free browser tool built on the key published by the West Yorkshire Archive Service. What was truly unbreakable was not the cipher itself, but the wall of silence that surrounded what the cipher contained. That silence lasted more than 100 years. Section 2 o'clock in the morning. After Anne Lister died in 1840, her partner Anne Walker had the body embalmed and shipped back to England. Anne was buried at Halifax Parish Church, now Halifax Minster, on the 29th of April, 1841. Walker inherited a lifetime interest in Shibden Hall, but she was eventually persuaded to leave and was later found to be of unsound mind. The diaries sat in the house. According to Calderdale Council, they went into the attic at Shibden and stayed there until a relative named John Lister, the last of the family to live in the house, found them. John Lister was born in 1847, an antiquarian who loved local history. In 1887, he began publishing edited selections from the diaries, focusing on Anne's social life and business enterprises. At that stage, by most accounts, he could not yet read the coded passages. He was publishing what he could. Then, sometime between 1887 and 1892, and the exact year is not settled, he worked at the cipher with his friend Arthur Burrell, a Bradford antiquarian. The West Yorkshire Archive Service, which holds Burrell's own letter describing the event, dates the breakthrough to the early 1890s at 2 in the morning, and Burrell's account is extraordinary. He recalled being certain of just 2 letters, H and E. Then, in a box behind the panels at Shibden Hall, halfway down a collection of old deeds, he found a scrap of paper that read, in the crypt hand, "In God is my..." They saw at once that the next word had to be hope. The rest of the alphabet fell into place, and then they read what the code actually said. Burrell was appalled. In a letter to the Halifax Borough Librarian dated the 12th of December 1936, written, note, more than 40 years after the event, Burrell remembered the moment plainly. He wrote that John Lister was distressed, but that Lister refused to take his advice, which was, and I am quoting Burrell directly, to burn all 27 volumes. You have to understand the legal climate. Sodomy had carried the death penalty in England until 1861. The Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885 had extended the law to criminalize acts of gross indecency between men in private as well as in public. The Oscar Wilde trials, only a few years off, would show exactly how hostile public opinion was. For 2 Victorian men to be holding a detailed, explicit first-person account of a woman's decades-long sexual relationships with other women was not just scandalous. It felt dangerous. And by several accounts, John Lister, who was gay himself, had a personal reason not to draw attention to what he'd found. He did not burn the diaries. He hid them behind a panel on the first floor of Shibden Hall. And when he died in 1933, he took his knowledge of the coded diaries to the grave. Section: A Century of Silence, or almost. In 1933, Shibden Hall and its parkland were given to Halifax Corporation. Arthur Burrell, by then in his 80s, gave the corporation the details of the code. The borough librarian, Edward Green, had his daughter Muriel sort the enormous mass of manuscripts and unsorted letters. Some 1,850 of those letters are still held by the archive today. Early researchers, Muriel Green among them, worked from the originals with the key, producing chronologies and summaries of the coded sections. And then, astonishingly, nothing happened. The historian Jill Liddington has traced how the diaries passed from hand to hand through the middle of the 20th century, through 3 separate custodians, none of whom publicly disclosed that Anne Lister was attracted to women, despite knowing. Various historians studied the diaries in the 1950s. No hint of her sexuality was published. As one recent academic account of that history puts it, what we are looking at is repeated suppression by numerous historians over the course of 100 years. It was not that the code could not be read, it was that no one wanted to say out loud what it said. Section: The Dead Sea Scrolls of Lesbian History. That changed because of a schoolteacher. In the 1980s, a teacher and historian named Helena Whitbread was looking at microfilmed copies of the diaries at Halifax Library. She noticed the coded passages. A library worker handed her a photocopy of Arthur Burrell's code, and she took home the 1817 diary and began translating. By her own account, the passage that broke it open for her was dated the 12th of December, 1817, recording Anne's time in York visiting a woman named Mariana Belcombe, later Mariana Lawton. In 1988, after years of work on the diaries of 1817 to 1824, Whitbread published I Know My Own Heart through Virago Press. The title comes from a line Anne adapted from the opening of Rousseau's Confessions. I know my own heart and understand my fellow man, but I am made unlike anyone I have ever met. I dare to say that I am like no one in the whole world. Before that book, every published selection of the diaries had deliberately omitted the more controversial coded passages. Only a handful of scholars knew what they contained. The American edition was billed by its publisher as a Rosetta Stone of lesbian history, and the reception was a mix of celebration, delight, and a certain amount of skepticism. Some readers simply did not believe a Regency woman had written this. Writing later, the novelist Emma Donoghue called the Lister Diaries the Dead Sea Scrolls of lesbian history. In 2011, the diaries were inscribed on UNESCO's UK Memory of the World Register. And then, in 2019, along came Gentleman Jack. Section, The Show versus the Woman. The BBC and HBO series, created by Sally Wainwright, catapulted Anne Lister into mass public consciousness. It dramatized her courtship of Anne Walker, the woman she considered her wife. And that union, by the way, is real. On Easter Sunday, the 30th of March, 1834, Anne Lister and Anne Walker attended a service at Holy Trinity Church, Goodramgate, York. They took communion side by side, having already exchanged rings and made private vows. Anne's diaries record it as the blessing of their marriage, a marriage with no legal standing whatsoever. A plaque now stands at the church, put up by the York Civic Trust in 2018. Its original wording called Lister a gender non-conforming entrepreneur who celebrated marital commitment without legal recognition to Anne Walker at that site, and after a public row over the fact that it avoided the word lesbian, the trust replaced it with new wording that names her as one. The show captured much of that. What it could not fully convey was the scale. The sheer, obsessive 4 to 5 million word monument Anne Lister built out of ink, paper, and a cipher she trusted with her most dangerous truths, or the century it took for anyone to have the courage to let those truths be read. She has been called by many the first modern lesbian. That is a label applied to her, not a finding of fact. But what is fact, documented in her own hand across thousands of pages, is that Anne Lister lived on her own terms in an era that would have punished her for it, and she trusted a homemade code to keep her private life private long after she was gone. She was almost right. The code held for 50 years and the silence around it for 100. It just did not hold forever. Now, if this story gripped you, there is another historical cipher mystery that connects to it in a way almost nobody talks about. The diary of a 17th century Englishman whose own shorthand code hid secrets of a completely different kind, and whose decoding took even longer than Anne Lister's. That story is coming soon. If you want to be here when it drops, you know what button to hit.